Hello, trusted listeners. I have such an exciting opportunity guest for you today. We have Leah Davidson here who is going to talk to us about the nervous system. Leah is a an expert in all things nervous system, and I thought it would be great to bring her on the podcast and just talk about how the nervous system really plays such an important role in everything that we're talking about around food, and also while we're in this series around hunger, what else, how the nervous system can really play into hunger. So, Leah, welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself for those listeners who may not be familiar with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about hunger and food and all things because I think it really ties nicely in with the nervous system. Nervous system, in my opinion, is foundation to everything. We
Yeah.
cannot talk about any topic without the nervous system. You know that joke, all roads lead to Rome. All conversations with me lead to the nervous system. So like you said, I am a coach and an educator and a teacher all about the nervous system. But really, I got my start professionally. Have been a speech language pathologist for the past 26 years as well. And I worked in the area of traumatic brain injury. So that is what drew me to learning about the brain and all things about the brain, what happens when things go wrong in the brain, how the brain can rewire, which you can't talk about the brain without talking about the nervous system. We never used to talk about the nervous system. But I
Right.
think, as we've learned more about the brain and the body, there has been, the real understanding that we don't have a brain and a body. They are together. They are
Yes.
coordinated. It's not even when we say the word connection, it implies that they're separate, but it is like a continuous communication loop that happens. So just over time, learning more and more about the nervous system and how that impacts people who have had injuries. And then I started realizing it's not just people who have had injuries, it's everybody. We all have we live in a world right now that is filled with lots of stressors. So there's lots of dysregulated nervous systems out there. We don't even know what that even means. And it's impacting our physical health, our emotional health. It impacts our hunger. It impacts our relationships. It impacts our businesses. It impacts everything. That's why I say everything leads back to the nervous system because you throw me a topic and I can rapid fire within 3 points, bring it right back to the nervous system. So
Yes, it's kind of like the three steps to Kevin Bacon, right? We can have three steps to the nervous system.
exactly. 3 steps to the nervous system. It's always this.
Yes.
I'd be surprised if we even needed 3 steps because
Yeah.
the way we view the world, the way we think, feel, act is through the lens of our nervous system. And if we don't know anything about our nervous system, if we don't understand the nervous system, it literally is like we are wearing glasses with a certain tint and we have no idea that it has that tint until
Yes.
one day something comes along. And sometimes it's not the most pleasant thing that comes along where these glasses are ripped off and we have this realization, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize what was going on with my body or how my body was trying to communicate with me.
Yes.
We talk, the nervous system will whisper to you initially, and if you don't listen, it will scream. And you'll
Yes.
pay attention to that. And all of a sudden, you'll be in this nervous system world wondering, how did I not know about it? Well, the body wants to be heard. And I think that's where it ties in, which I'm sure we'll get to about hunger, is that,
Yes.
the body wants to be heard. How do we start listening to what the body wants to say?
I love that. I love that terminology. I've always one of the things I say a lot is your body is always communicating with you, but I love your lens of the body wants to be heard. It's like, oh, that's so powerful. I also really just kind of want to go back to what you said a little while ago about the brain and the body being, it's not necessarily connected because that implies there's a separation and then
Right.
something connects them. The continuous communication and that continuous loop there
Yeah.
between the brain and the body. And one of the things that is so common for people who have challenges with food is that desire to disconnect, really disconnect from the body for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
And so really kind of just being able to really understand, even if we have kind of mentally disconnected from the body, kind of like I'm just a I had a client once who was like, I really just literally have lived life from the neck up. And my body has been something that I've seen it as something to kind of, manipulate or try to control or try to change, but I never really saw it as part of me. And it's such a common experience and such a common
Yeah.
perspective. So when we can start to really learn about what the nervous system even is and
Yeah.
start to see it for ourselves and make those connections, it's
Yeah.
I know for me, it was a huge, huge piece of my recovery in
Yeah.
binge eating was really learning about the nervous system. Like I thought I had it figured out with kind of
Yeah.
some of the food stuff and really looking at my thoughts and oh,
Yeah.
okay, I can like kind of change the way that I'm thinking about things. And then it was actually I started working on my business and building my business, and then all of a sudden here I am like binging again. I'm like, what is happening? And then I learned about the nervous system. So for
Yeah.
people who might be listening who maybe don't have much knowledge about the nervous system, can you give us a primer? How do you describe the nervous system, and what do we need to know?
Yeah. So, I mean, the nervous system is essentially how the brain and the body communicate with each other. And so it is made up of, different parts. We'll talk probably about the vagus nerve, but the main role of your nervous system is your survival. So and we're talking about the autonomic nervous system. So it is about your survival. And it is constantly looking at how to run all the things behind the scenes to keep you alive. So that's why it's in charge of your heartbeat, and it's in charge of your breathing, and it's in charge of your digestion and all those things. And because it's responsible for your survival, it is constantly checking in to see whether you are safe or in danger. And um, I think sometimes we assume that it's like one thing that it's checking, but the nervous system is like it's multitasking. It's checking out what's happening in your environment. So looking at your senses, what do you see? What can you touch? What do you hear? And then it's checking in with what's going on in your body, which is where this piece of when you're living head up only from your brain, you're missing out on all these cues because your body is always sending you a cue. And I think if you stop and think about it, when you feel sensations in your body, do they feel good? Do they feel bad? What messages are they trying to communicate? So your nervous system is paying attention to that. Hey, her heart is racing, or she's got some cramping in her stomach right now, or she's got some pain in a certain area, and it will label that as safety and danger. And then it's also picking up on what's going on relationally, what's going on between you and I. Like our nervous systems right now, we may be having a conversation, but our nervous systems are communicating. Like my nervous system is watching you nod right now. And so it's sending me the message it's safe to keep talking. Oh, this is somebody who's receptive. So all these things collectively, it forms almost like this opinion, and then it facts checks. It goes back and it like does this comparison. Have we ever had this experience before? Is this similar? And if it is an experience where maybe it wasn't safe, so say you were cringing or something, then my nervous system may be picking up. She's cringing. When has that happened? Oh, when you're younger back then. And it doesn't even, it's not conscious. I'm saying it as if we are consciously. It's not happening consciously. It's happening behind the scenes. And it's like a predictor. Oh, this is safe, therefore I can do this. This is dangerous, therefore I can do this. Based on whether, and this is what we call neuroception. I know, like it's based on polyvagal theory with Dr. Stephen Porges. He coined this term neuroception because it's not just cognitive, it's not just perception, it's what is going on around us, inside us, and between us. If it deems that you're safe, then there's no problem. We kind of go along our merry way, and your thinking still stay on tack, and you're able to, come up with all those emotions that we want to have. I want to be compassionate and curious and kind and resilient and all these things. I can do that when I'm safe. I can think logically. I can have good connections. I can reach out to people when we are in that safe state. But if there is something that has tipped it off for danger, and it has mapped out from the past, okay, this is familiar, the nervous system goes into a protective mode. Oh, there's something wrong here. And generally, when we first are in line of protection, we add energy to our system. Now, hopefully, we just add a little bit of energy. It's still safe. We take care of things. But often, what happens is we add too much energy. And that too much energy either shows up in ways of aggression, so fight, or avoidance, get out of there, flee. And so you'll start to have, not only your body will have the excess energy, which often brings excess tension. You feel yourself getting amped up, hyped up, but it shows up in your thoughts and your feelings and your actions. So it will show up like when I talk with people, the nervous system is very closely tied to your emotions, although it is not your emotions. When you are in a hyper state, which is this activation, your emotions are flavored with that energy. So, aggression, anger, anxiety, worry, overthinking, like defensiveness, these are all things that have this air of almost danger, risk, edginess. That's when it has so much energy. That's sort of how it first starts to protect itself. Now, sometimes it will try, and it's exhausting to stay in that state. And so it literally will say, I got to shut down. We got to conserve some energy. And it will drop down into a more hypo aroused state. It will do that. Or if it has assessed the situation to be so dangerous, it's just like, we're just going to shut down completely. And it will go into, again, it's still a protective state, but it's like a slowing down. And that's where we see people, there's exhaustion, there is, a mental, emotional shutdown, there is a collapse of your system. And this immobility. So we have one with mobility and the immobility. All these states, those are the main ones. Then there's all these combined ones too. But all these states are normal. We will all go through them. But a healthy nervous system is one that, first of all, can accurately look at what's going on and assign you the state that is the best state for whatever tools you need, and then be able to return you to a baseline, a state of safety. So sometimes I think when people think about a healthy nervous system, they're thinking, well, I'll be calm all the time. I'll never react. I'll never do anything. No, you will appropriately, because we are meant to. Life is going to throw at you all sorts of stressors. We're going to go up and down, up and down. A healthy nervous system can go up without the fear, or can go down without the fear of getting stuck there. It just knows, like, okay, yeah, I need to put more resources here, or my resources are being conserved, but I know I can get back home. I know I can get back to safety. So that is what we're trying to learn. We're trying to learn, how do I read my external cues? How do I read my internal cues? How do I read the between cues? And then how do I allow myself to be in whatever state I get biologically assigned, and then bring myself back down into a home state so that I can start living with intentionality and not just reactivity.
When you just said the state that I'm biologically assigned, talk to me a little bit more about that.
Because it's before conscious choice. And,
Mm.
and that is the piece. I think it's such a liberating thing to understand that when you have a reaction where maybe you get amped up or you get shut down, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not a broken person or morally bad or morally superior. It just means that along the way throughout your life, your nervous system starts to develop in utero. So it's very tied to your mother's nervous system, which is tied to her parents. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of DNA. It's also as you're born, you have experiences all the way along. You brilliantly adapted to all these experiences and you learned all these ways for your survival. And so as you got older, you just had these adaptations and they're not deliberate adaptations. This is just what we learned. Your nervous system learned that this is how we survive. Okay, keep doing that. And so we hit this point where we will have these reactions, but what we do want to do is we want to be able to identify them so that we can interrupt them. And now, as a grown up adult, do I want to act in that way? Like I might get triggered. This is such a big word that people talk about, but all that really means is that my nervous system has identified something from the past that's similar. It's coming up for me. I may get triggered with it, and I can't really help that trigger. Although, with time, what happens is you start to notice your triggers are less and less and less as you continue to learn about your nervous system and regulating it. But can I interrupt it so that I can deliberately get my thinking brain, my rational brain, my CEO brain, which goes offline when our nervous system is activated? That's why when people think like, well, it's a choice. No, if something is a choice, it means your rational brain, your thinking brain is online. We know that when you have a stress response, when you are in a situation that your nervous system deems as danger, the majority of the pathway to your thinking skills is cut off. Why? Because the goal is survival. I don't need to be problem solving and thinking and having a vision board and being calm and curious. I don't need that when I'm focused on survival. So when we're focused on survival, everything biologically is sent to our survival. And so we will respond. And then we want to just get familiar. What is our responses? What are the signs? That's how I always say to people, like, you want to learn what your landscape is. We don't learn how to try to change something first. We got to learn like what is my tendency to go to? Not because I'm bad or shameful or just because my nervous system brilliantly adapted. And here I am now, though, older, thinking, I don't know if I want to do that anymore. I kind of want to do it a different way. And then we learn how to do it. We have to first develop the capacity to learn how to do it a different way.
Yeah. I remember when I learned about the nervous system and I really started kind of identifying my own landscape and really trying to kind of make sense of what was happening through the lens of the nervous system, what was happening in my body, what was happening with food. And I realized, oh my gosh, I spent so much of my time in that hyper aroused state. For me, flight is kind of what I go to. I tend more towards anxiety, overthinking,
Yeah.
overwhelm is kind of
Yeah.
where my brain likes to go. And
Me
then I
too.
realized, yeah,
I'll see you
then
there.
yes, exactly. We'll meet there. Then I realized what was happening is I would be in this state with all of this excess energy. And then I brilliantly figured out that food would help bring that energy down. And so when I could see that, and it was like, oh, I think I actually first learned about that and the window of tolerance
Yeah.
in intensive outpatient therapy.
Mhm.
And where then, so you eat food to kind of bring that energy down, and then you end up all the way down through the window. And now you're in the hypo
Yeah.
aroused state on the couch, doing
Yeah.
nothing, maybe just trying to figure out how to stop doing these terrible things. Once I realized that, it was like, oh, and I could also see that I was always going, 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 and I never allowed myself to stop or to rest. And it was, when you talked about the body will whisper, but if you don't listen, it will yell.
Yeah.
This is when it's like my body would be like, well, the only way I'm going to get you to slow down is by through this binge, you will slow down, you will be on the couch. And so that was one of
Yeah.
the ways. And
Yeah.
then also with food, if I'm not eating enough food, the body will eventually get what it needs through a binge. So,
The
yeah.
body knows, this is where I love talking about this because it removes the shame. Like for you, it could be a binge. For other people, it is, digestive problems, irritable
Mhm.
bowel syndrome. Some people it's migraines, some people it's back pain, some people it's there's a lot of chronic pain and a lot of chronic symptoms, anxiety, a lot of things that will show up
Mm.
and it's getting your attention.
Yes.
Because it's clever. Like, it's
Mm.
sort of like it's figuring out and it tries all these different things. And there's also, like, patterns. We probably watched our parents, like, that's why you see certain people, there's patterns like, "Oh, yeah, I've got a family history of migraines or family history of gut issues." So
Mhm.
it's sort of like I'm predisposed to certain things, but your nervous system also knows, like, okay, it's kind of like the warning light goes on in your car, and you're
Yes.
just like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll get to it, I'll get to it." And it will tolerate that for a while. You don't need to get gas right away. The warning light's on, the warning light. But eventually what will happen is it will stall out, and it doesn't matter whether you're on a country road or a super highway or anything. It's just like, "Sorry, now you're gonna have to pay attention." And I think our
Yes.
body does that in different ways for each of us. And that's
Yes.
why I love, like, remove the shame of whatever, however it is. I think sometimes we have put some morality on, well, this one's better than that one. No, it's
Yes.
just adaptations that we
Yes. Yes, that's so powerful. I always talk about one of the analogies I use a lot with binges is that they're lights on the dashboard. They just tell us there's something going on under the hood. And if we can remove shame and judgment is that 50-pound weight that's on the hood. We can't even
Yeah.
get under the hood
Yeah.
to see. But once we can, if we can put shame and judgment to the side, then we can see what else is going on.
Yeah.
And nervous system dysregulation is absolutely one of those things. Okay, let's talk about hunger. And first, let's do this. Talk to us about the difference between neuroception. You mentioned neuroception earlier,
Mhm.
but let's kind of set the stage with neuroception and interoception. And then we can kind of like go into hunger from there.
Yeah, yeah. So neuroception is kind of what's going on behind the scenes. It is making that assessment of safety or danger. So it's always going to be looking at that. And it does pick up on some of what's going on inside, which is what we'll talk about interoception. But neuroception is looking at, we have exteroception. So that's like what's happening externally. Interoception is what's going on inside my body. And then neuroception takes the exteroception, the interoception, as well as our relational going back and forth. So it's looking at it. And its main role is to sort of see, like, am I safe here or am I in danger here? Like, this is what it's picking up on. Interoception is basically being familiar with what are the sensations in your body. Different than emotions. Like, sensations are sort of like that raw data that you have in your body. And then often what we do is we come along and we use emotions, we slap labels. Oh, those feelings mean I'm angry. Those feelings mean I'm. But before we get to those emotional things, we want to just start playing with what is going on in my body. And I think a lot of times we missed that step, which is why
Yes.
so many of us, we don't notice when we're getting subtle signs. Like, we may not notice certain hunger, or we may not notice that, oh, I'm getting I sort of look at it, one of my tendencies to get is like migraines. And I look at, if I'm paying close attention, there are signs my body starts giving me that it's heading into migraine world. It starts off very, very subtle. And then it will get into, like, I get a little bit of a neck pain, and I'll get a little bit of an aura, and then I'll start having vision. And now I'm like, if I can recognize those signs, pay attention to those signs, treat those signs with whatever it is that I do. Like, a lot of it for me, it's just cluing in, like, you're doing too much. you're feeling stressed out, you're not taking care of yourself, then I can usually prevent the full-blown migraine that's going to knock me off my feet for how many days. But I think if we're not in tune enough, or if we're fearful of the symptoms, and
Yes.
so we give them so much, like that panic. Like I have lots of these chronic things, which is part of the reason why I love learning about my nervous system. But the other way, migraines is a way, but irritable bowel syndrome is another way
Mm.
for me. And I know what happens is, so maybe I will get like some rumblings. It is so easy to then just start spiraling. Oh no, what's going to happen? And then you start having anxiety, as opposed to just going in and noticing, okay, I think maybe if I slow my breath down, what can I do to relax? My body is trying to send a signal to me. And if I'm paying close enough attention, which is what interoception is, do I notice not just like the pain and the obvious ones? Do I notice that my breath is changing? Do I notice how that the fluttering, is my heart beating a little bit faster? Temperature, what's going on with that? All those things inside me, can I start paying closer attention to them? Because if I notice them now, I can often do something about it before it ends up taking over.
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful. I was thinking about, to go back a little bit, when you were talking about the nervous system and talking about how, our nervous system is taking into account things that happened in the past,
Yeah.
as well as, what's happening currently. One of the things that I think can really happen with hunger, particularly with somebody who has had a long history of struggle with food, is the relationship with hunger can be really fraught. I know for me, there were several things around hunger. I would be afraid to get too hungry
Yeah.
because I had this idea, this that if I got too hungry, then I would binge.
Yeah.
And so I was often pre-eating, kind of like trying
Mhm.
to preempt hunger. Well, I'm not hungry yet, but I'm not going to be able to eat for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and eat now. Or even just at the very first hint of hunger, I've got to take care of this because I was so afraid
Yeah.
of the binge. And then on the other side, it would, once I realized, oh, actually, hunger, I don't have to respond right away. Then I pushed it too far. And so it was really interesting to, for me to kind of look at that. And I think a lot of people have that, whether they've been on so many diets that any hint of hunger is kind of almost a connection to the nervous system of
Yeah.
like, are you going to do this again? Are you going to starve me again?
Yeah.
So there can be kind of that association. There can be so many kind of layers
Yeah.
involved.
Because then what happens is hunger will start signaling danger. Because the other thing that happens with the brain is it learns patterns. It's very good at learning patterns, and it will learn patterns of all symptoms. So it will learn, is hunger dangerous to you?
Mm,
And then
mhm.
it's like, let me do you a favor. Every time you're hungry, we're just going to bypass anything and go right to what we think is going to be helpful for you, which
Mm,
it's not when we want to break it apart. But,
yeah.
it's efficiency. And
Mhm.
our nervous system we are wired to be efficient. So it's protective.
Yeah.
And if it thinks there's danger because you've learned danger, you've had past danger, it's like, I'm helping you out here.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
where we wanna interrupt that pattern.
And it can also happen in the opposite, right? Where it's like, well, I'm just not going to send you signals at
Oh,
all
yeah.
because you're not responding to me, so I'm just not even going to send them.
Yeah. And it usually will try to find ways to make you listen.
Yeah,
And
right.
so sometimes it's signals, sometimes it's not signals. We do know that the brain is very good at learning patterns and recognizing patterns. And, we talk about the power of neuroplasticity, and it's such an amazing thing that the brain can rewire and the brain can change. And yeah, for good and bad. Like
Mhm,
it's not just,
mhm.
we think of all these great things like, I can relearn that, I can rewire this, I can do that. Yeah, but it's always learning. It's
Mm,
always learning. So it can be learning behind the scenes without you realizing that you're teaching it. You're
mm,
teaching, especially when we fuel it with fear.
yes.
And sometimes it's fear and things like intensity and pressure and fixating on it. Like those are things that sort of amplify the experience. And an
Yes.
amplified experience or an emotional experience to the brain is like, oh, we better pay attention to that. Even though we don't want it to create that pattern, we're doing it by how we focus so much on it.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so let's break this down into practical things that our listeners can do. And so if we kind of combine the what you talked about like getting to know your landscape and then also what we can do as we're kind of exploring hunger, our relationship with hunger, this idea of, wanting to be able to rewire into, kind of different patterns, different associations. What are some practical things that our listeners can
Yeah.
can do?
Yeah. One of the places I always like to start is I like to look at we understand our landscapes. And then there's things I give the analogy of it's like you're joining a sports team when you're learning about your nervous system. And when you join a sports team, you've got to be doing some things at home and you got to be eating, you got to be sleeping, you got to be getting your sunlight. So there's some basics. And then you want to be going to practice. And when you go to practice, this is where you're going to be like, doing some drills and doing some basic things that are building up your endurance and your strength and learning some techniques. You're going to learn some techniques that you're going to take when you go to the game. And then when you're in the game, there's certain techniques that you're going to want to have. Like you want to know if there's a corner kick or if there's somebody, I can't even think of all this. I'm not a huge sports person, but like a foul, you got to know what to do. And so you want to be looking at how do I support myself from the foundational piece? How do I support myself in a daily sense? And then how do I support myself in the moment?
Mm,
And I like to go to that in the moment place because the in the moment place is can I get good at doing three things? I call it the safety sequence. And basically it is can I become aware of the neuroception piece? Stopping and asking myself, am I actually in danger here or am I safe? Because I think a lot of times what happens is our systems are so protective. We think we're in danger a lot more than
lot.
we actually are. Like,
Absolutely.
like everything.
Yeah.
So it's asking ourselves so that we accurately neurocepting that we're in danger? Well,
Mm,
I'm sitting at my desk. I can see these lights. I can touch my desk. I'm not actually in danger in this exact moment, not 5 minutes ago, not in the future, in this exact moment. So that is that neuroception piece. And then I want to do some interoception. I want to get into my body. And when I get into my body, really the question is do I feel that I'm safe? And this is where we may notice I don't feel safe.
mhm,
And that's why we want to well, what is it about? Well, I notice I don't feel safe when my breath is a certain way, or I have this sort of pain, or whatever it is. We're not trying to argue, like, well, you should feel safe. You are safe. No, we're just noticing. Interesting. I'm sitting here, I'm totally safe, but my body doesn't feel safe.
mm,
And then the third piece is we want to try to relax our body in some way. And there's so many different ways to do it. I talk about just doing a rag doll where we just sort of like let all the tension out, but it can be done through breath work. It can be done through like panoramic vision. Those three things, what we keep doing when we do those three steps over and over and over is we have touch points of safety into our day. And the more we have these, it's like drops in the bucket of safety. The more we have drops in the bucket of safety, we build our capacity for safety. We build our ability to check in with what's going on in our body. We build our ability to look around us and use our cognition to identify whether we're safe or not. And then when we relax our body, what we learn is a body that is relaxed cannot house stress. You really, really can't. You can't yell at your partner when you're in a relaxed body. If you're in a fight with somebody, you're activated, there's energy. So the more you practice these things, the more you become much more aware and you can make accurate interpretations. So, coming back to things like hunger, if you're doing this regularly, you start having like these placeholders of, okay, I know what hunger is like. Oh, isn't that interesting? This is what my body's telling me. What comes first? What comes next? So it
Mhm.
starts giving you some data points that you can start looking at and learning. Okay, how does my system respond when I'm constantly, I feel myself activated, I bring it back down with these 3 steps. Feel myself activated, bring myself down, or vice versa. I feel that I'm low, I bring myself up a little bit and keep playing with that.
I love that. Two things that are coming to me as you're describing this. One is thinking about a person who hunger may not feel safe. And so I'm imagining somebody being able to go through this exercise. It's like, okay, am I safe right now? Well, I am. Like I'm here, I'm alive, I'm sitting here, going into the interoceptive piece, like, but I don't feel
Feel.
safe. It's like, and I can imagine just kind of putting myself in that situation. It's like I can imagine this, like, I don't feel safe because I don't know when am I going to eat, or what am I going to eat, or how much am I going to end up eating, what might be there. And then that third piece of really inviting that, like bringing in some relaxation, like, okay, just, I mean, I can see how much relief that could bring. Number one, to just notice, like, wow, I
Mm,
actually am okay, but internally doesn't
yeah,
feel okay. But then to be able to bring some relaxation there, like that's amazing. So I love that that example. And then I was thinking about, oh, I think I might have lost it. Oh, I might have lost it. The other thing I was going to say, it'll come back to me if it was important.
that's right.
If it was for us, it will
Yeah,
come back.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is you need, and I use need in quotation marks because I don't want it to be you have to do it this way because the nervous system needs an invitation, really. It doesn't want to be forced. But you're going to be doing this. You feel dysregulated hundreds of times a day. Like it's normal to
Yes.
feel dysregulated. We just want to get good at identifying. It's almost like getting back to an analogy of driving. You're just checking your speedometer. I'm driving, it's on the gas. I check, oh, I'm going a little too fast. I'm going to ease up on the
Mm,
gas. And then I'm
yes.
going to add, I'm going to ease up. It's not like we get in there and we set it, and unless you have cruise control. So that, let's remove that from the analogy. But we're constantly adjusting, and we're adjusting our speed depending on the roads that we're at. Like,
Yes.
you're not always driving the same speed on a country road or a city road versus a highway. We
Yes.
need to be making those adjustments. So when we notice that, oh my gosh, I have to, because I have clients that will often say to me, like, I love the safety sequence, but I have to do it all the time. Initially, we don't wanna have it. I usually recommend for people, like, just, stop every once in a while. Tie it into when you take a sip of water, when you go to the bathroom, or you do something like that. But what you'll start to see is your body kind of wants to do it
Yes.
because it's like recalibrating. So now I'll just be like sitting with clients and I'll be doing it. Not like, am I safe? Do I feel like it
Right.
becomes just a very natural thing. And you start to see your body starts wanting to have that comfort, to have that relaxation. But you will always have to regulate. This is
Right.
not a one and done thing. It is like fuel, it's like food. You're always going to have to eat.
Yes.
You're always going to have to be checking in and giving yourself safety. And we don't want to get rid of it because sometimes we need that activation. It's just much less than we assume. Like we're in
Right.
danger. Our nervous system reads everything. Like she looked at me the wrong way. She didn't answer the question right away. She said that. And we're always reading and we read all that as danger.
What's
And
so
so
powerful for me to think about is the difference in our bodies, though. Like when there's real danger, to go back to our driving analogy, right? When you're
Mhm.
on the freeway and somebody, comes over into your lane like that,
Yep.
like that real, like not that
Yeah.
not that the other one is fake, but
Yeah.
it feels notably different.
Yes.
So it's
But
interesting to be able to
yeah,
see that.
the challenge with that is there are some people, like I think of like police officers and paramedics and where they are in that
Yes.
state often,
Yes. Yeah.
which is why it does become very important for them to learn, how do I remain sort of vigilant in a relaxed body?
Yeah.
So that I'm not, because this is why we have things like burnout is so high
Right.
in these professions, because they're
Yeah.
constantly on. What they need to learn is, how do I remain on so that I can confront all these threats that I genuinely am dealing with in a relaxed body. And that's
Right.
why things like the safety sequence is essentially is constantly self-regulating. How
Yes.
do I continuously do that so that my system doesn't have to stay jacked up all the time? Because
Mm.
we're not meant to be in a constant state of stress. We can't handle it. This is why we have so much chronic pain and illness and all these symptoms, because our system is like, oh, you're running at full capacity and I'm not meant for that. So we're
Yes.
trying to give it breaks as often as possible as we can throughout the day. But we
Mm.
still want it to like act when
Yes.
that car swerves
Yes.
in our lane, or we step out onto a curb and we have to jump back. We don't want to numb that out. And we
Yes.
never want to regulate when we are actually in danger, which is why it is so important for us to actually ask that question, am I
Mm.
safe?
Mm.
Because the majority of the time you are. But in the event you aren't, you don't want to calm your nervous system down.
Right.
You never want to try to regulate. You want to regulate enough so that you can have your thinking skills on, but you don't want to regulate when you're in danger um to the point where you're not going to do anything. It's just we're not in danger as much as we think we're in danger.
Right. The thing came back to me. It was when you were talking about that we cannot, what was the way that you phrased it? It was about we can't be.
You cannot house stress in a relaxed body.
Yes, you cannot house stress in a relaxed body. Thank you. I was
Yes.
thinking about how powerful this is, specifically as it relates to binging, because
Yeah.
binging, when the act of binging does not happen in a relaxed body,
That's
right?
right.
It's we're very tense. We're
That's right.
we're hiding. We're worried about what other people are, if anybody's going to see it or whatever
Yeah.
it is. There's so much tension in the body. I can just close
Yeah.
my eyes and imagine the
Yeah.
tension there. So I love this really practical application to bring some relaxation into your body. If we can't house stress in a relaxed body, it's that
Right.
the I love the safety sequence. It's we're really checking in on,
Mm.
do I am I safe? Do I feel safe? And then
I love
bringing
it.
that relaxation in. So
Yeah.
so powerful. Amazing. Well, Leah, I could keep talking to you for hours.
We will.
But
I'd love you on my podcast, so people can
yes.
just come on over and we'll continue a conversation there.
Well, and speaking of your podcast, tell us a little bit about your podcast. It is amazing. I am absolutely a regular listener. So tell us about your podcast. And also, if people are like, I love this woman, I want to learn more, where else, tell us where people can find you.
Yeah. Well, a great place to start is my podcast. It's called Building Resilience. So this is the kind of thing that we talk about all the time. All different ways of the nervous system. Like I said, to me it's foundational. So any topic, people think, "Well, how do you come up with it?" I'm like, I take any topic and then I'm like, "How does the nervous system see that?" So that's, you'll find me. It's called Building Resilience. I also have a journal, and I'm just about to launch my second stationery, and I have a third one coming out. So I have a journal which basically presents the whole framework that we talked about, how you learn your landscapes, and then what are some things that you can do to create this 90 days of daily habits. I have the safety sequence in there with a little card to help remember. And then I have another product that's coming out all about creating your capacity to be
Mm.
safe, affirmation cards. And so I'm super passionate. That's about available on Amazon. You can find me at Leah Davidson Life Coaching. That's on Instagram and Facebook. And I have it's called a Nervous System Journaling Club, where it's combining the power of journaling and doodling and community. Because that's the other piece, I think, that we heal in connections. We
Yes.
need other people. The more we share And it really kind of normalizes, like, what a relief it is when you hear somebody talk about some of the struggles that they're going through, and like, "Oh, that's
Yes.
what just being human is about.
Yes.
This is how
Yes.
it works." So,
Yes. That's the number one thing that people talk about in our Cultivate group is just
has
I don't feel so alone. I've never had anybody to talk to about my food struggles or anybody who really understands, what it's like. So, yeah, so
yeah.
powerful. Well, I will absolutely include links to all of the things you mentioned, all of the places. And Leah, thank you so much for being here and for just telling us so much about the nervous system. I agree with you. It is foundational to everything. So I know that this will just be so powerful for anyone who is listening. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
If you like what you're hearing, you will love my new book, The Binge Eating Breakthrough: Why Food Isn't the Problem and What Really Is. Discover why willpower isn't the answer, why restricting certain foods often backfires, and why understanding your brain and body is the key to lasting change. Learn to shift from shame and self-blame to curiosity and compassion. Get it today at janepilger.com/book.